What is up, film fam? It's your boy I of Alchemy coming at you with another video, and there is currently a love triangle happening with 3 cats in my driveway. So yeah, love is in the air. In my film camera collection video, which you can check out up here by the way, I told you guys that my Nikon L35AF will be replaced by a new camera, and that new camera is this Darth Vader looking ass camera, which is the Yashica T2. The Nikon L35AF is one of my point and shoot grail cameras. Then I got my hands on this. This was the camera that I never knew I needed. The Nikon L35AF has since been sold, RIP. I want to tell you about this camera. I absolutely love this camera, and to show you what this camera can do in its full glory, I hit up my homie Tlotliso and I was like, yo, let's go hit a street session. And the first thing that he asked me was cocaine or weed. I was like, what? Dude, cameras, come on man. For you spec hungry people, let's just get the tech specs out of the way so that we can get to the good stuff. The Yashica T2 is a 1980s point-and-shoot film camera which shoots 35mm film. Duh. It has shutter speeds ranging from 1/8 all the way up to 1/500th of a second, and it uses DX coded film. It can read DX coding from 50 all the way up to 1600 ISO. It also has automatic film advance and rewind, meaning that the only thing that you kinda have control over is the flash and composing your picture. It also uses an obnoxious ass 6V C3PO battery. Wait, no. That's from Star Wars, silly. It uses a 6V 2CR5 battery, and finding this battery is even harder than saying its name. And between you and me, paying for this battery, yeah, it takes more willpower than saying the name or finding it, because it kind of costs the price of a cheap point and shoot. Listening to all that specs, you might think, well, this is just a simple point and shoot camera like anything else from the 80s or 90s. And to that, I give you this. This is a Carl Zeiss Tessar 35mm f3.5 T-star lens with 4 elements in 3 groups. And this thing is fantastic. And it's also damn loud. Anyway, with the tech specs out of the way, let's hit the streets and see what this thing can do. This camera is known to be kind of trigger happy with the flash, so to combat that, I chucked in a roll of Lomo 800. I've never shot Lomo 800 before, so I was very excited to see what this film can produce, what flavor it has. Nice. Perfect. As you can see, Lomo likes to have this halation in the highlights that kind of reminds me of Cinestill 800T or 50D, and I dig it. I wouldn't recommend using this film for anything serious, and if you don't like the halation look, this film is not for you, but for anything else, I think it's cool. For the next couple shots, I really wanted to see how good this camera's metering system is, so I put it through the ringer with some tricky situations, and this camera puts out. I keep making things sound wrong. I mean, it keeps up, not puts out. Ready? So I guess this is a review of Lomo 800 and the Yashica T2 because I'm going to talk about the film stock as well. And as you can see, this camera meters pretty well in high contrast situations, but Lomo doesn't handle giving you much detail in the shadows when you have some bright highlights. This next shot, I actually want to talk about autofocus with this thing, because you kind of have to finesse the autofocus. If you have a really small subject that you're trying to focus on, you're not going to nail it the first time. And if you do, please DM me, we need to talk. We can see that the highlights are pretty hot, but I mean, it's 800 speed film in the middle of the day, so what did you expect? I do want to say that shooting with this camera is a breeze because it handles so well. You can see that it has a nice chunky grip, and this camera is a chunky boy, so it feels substantial in your hand. It's not light for a point and shoot. It's not small either. If you like big cameras, you're gonna like this thing. If you after the more sleek look, like on the Olympus Mu 2 or the XA, yeah, this is not gonna be your vibe. Let me just talk about Lomo 800 for a minute. It's a very warm film stock. As I said before, the color saturation is fantastic on this film stock, and the lens's color rendition complements that perfectly. Let's talk about the responsiveness of this camera. I'm so used to that half a second delay between pressing the shutter button and the shutter actually firing on the Olympus Mu 2 that I did the same thing with this shot. And as you can see, this lady is not placed perfectly between the stair railings. As soon as you press this thing's shutter, it's gonna fire, and that's excellent for street photography. With these next couple shots, I just wanted to see how much contrast this camera is gonna produce and how much contrast Lomo is gonna put between the greens and the blues and the reds and the oranges. I also wanted to see how much this lens is gonna vignette, if at all, and I have to say, even when there was a little bit of vignetting, it wasn't much. Straight out of camera, you're gonna have some pretty good shots. Lomo 800 isn't the sharpest stock, but you can see that for a 35mm medium res scan, there is tons of information in here, and the color is absolutely fantastic. I wanted to skin people. Well, yeah, no, that wouldn't work out well. I wanted to see how hot highlights run on people's skin for portraiture. While the highlights are hot, I think that it looks pretty good. I also wanted to see how this lens handles flaring, and while there is a flare, it's not overbearing and it doesn't spoil your shot completely. So for a point and shoot, I think you are absolutely fine. Before I show you these last two shots, I just want to say that these two are my favorite of the roll. Let me know in the comments what you think about it, but I think there's so much complexity and so many layers in these photos that I could look at them for a while and still find new things to look at. After seeing all of that, I want to know what your thoughts are on this camera and how it stands up to other premium point and shoot cameras. That being said, I actually want to touch on some points that I haven't spoken of before. I want to recap on some negatives and positives and give you a little spice at the end. Let's start recapping on the negatives first, and then we can move to the positives. So the first thing is going to be, this camera is hella loud. This camera works the same as the Nikon L35 in the way that that's the shutter sound, and only when you release the button, it winds on and makes that loud whirring noise. You are not going to be stealthy on the street with this thing. This is a loud ass camera. The next point I want to touch on with this thing is the obnoxious ass battery. Like, I spent 2 weeks trying to find a battery for this thing, and it might just be that I'm a dumbass, which is true, and I didn't look at the right places. But if you're gonna choose a battery for a camera to use, why not choose one that's readily available? And I know I'm talking to a dead camera company right now, but Yashica, get your shit together, man. The next point with this thing, the no flash button. It sucks. Let me explain. On most point and shoot cameras in the premium range, you get a button that gives you an option to turn off the flash. With this, you have to hold the button in, and you have to hold that button in with the strength of Hercules, hold on for dear life, and pray that the flash doesn't fire, because if you let go just a bit, the flash is gonna fire. Middle of the day, 400 speed film, camera is gonna fire the flash. Go figure. The next negative is only a possible negative. In my opinion, I see it as a positive, and that is that this camera is a certified chunky boy. I love it. I love the aesthetic of this camera. I'll speak about that a bit more later, but if you don't like heavy cameras, if you don't like big cameras for your compacts, this is not the camera for you. The next point I want to touch on is the autofocus. Like I said, if your subject is small, you're gonna need to refocus more than once. Another thing is that the minimum focus distance for this thing is only 1 meter. No selfies unless you are playing in the NBA. Now let's get to the positives about this thing. The Yashica T2, yep, it teased 2. I don't know 2 watts, but it's teasing. The Yashica T2's cherry on top is its lens. This thing is absolutely phenomenal. Its color rendition is insane. The micro contrast, why did I say contrast weird? The micro contrast for a point and shoot camera is excellent. The sharpness, well, I think it stands toe to toe with SLR lenses overall. This lens is fantastic. Next pro with this thing is the metering. The metering is always on point. Now, with the autofocus and the metering, I have to say that I have not missed a single shot on this roll. As you can see, none of my subjects were out of focus. Where I wanted to focus was where the camera focused. That's another thing I want to touch on. Autofocus is instantaneous in good light. Now, I haven't tested out this thing in really bad light, like a completely dark room, but like, why would you do that anyway? I know that I did say the battery was a con and how the flash works as well, but where it's a pro is that the flash is freaking powerful and the recycling time is almost instant. With most point and shoot cameras, you have to wait like 7 to 13 seconds for the flash to recycle, and that would be because they are using CR123A batteries or even AA batteries. But with this thing, let me show you. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, etc. The next pro about this camera is its dashing good looks. Besides the fact that it kind of looks like Darth Vader, I love this 80s boxy aesthetic. I love the sharp angles on this thing. I love the corners. I love the design of it. This grip is fantastic, which ties in with ergonomics, and I can hold this thing with 4 fingers, and I don't have a small hand. Look, I have a fat head, so look at this, man. And I can fit my hand comfortably on this camera with 4 fingers. And if I hold it with 3 fingers here, my index finger falls intuitively on the shutter button. Another thing I like is that at the back of the camera, we have this ribbed textured part. It makes for a really good thumb grip, even though it's flat. The final point I want to touch on is kind of a two-parter, and it's a little bit controversial. The first part isn't, the second part definitely is. And the first part is that for what you're getting, this camera is cheap. And compared to other luxury premium point and shoot compacts, what? A point and shoot is a compact. Compared to other luxury 35mm compact cameras, this thing is a steal. For example, you could buy 5 of these for the price of a Contax T2. It's about 4 to 6 times cheaper than a Yashica T4, T3 or T5. You are going to be saving a lot of money, and you are getting a lot of camera for your money. Now here's the second part. I think that this camera is actually better than most other compact cameras that's going to cost you, what, $1,000, $1,200. Why? Well, because it's a compact camera. If you're not using this thing for professional shoots, which very few people do, then I think that you are getting an excellent camera. I have no problem walking around with this, shooting with it, and not taking my SLR at all, because I'm going to get SLR quality results. That's just how good this thing is. And a bonus pro is this lens cover. This smoky, transparent screen over your lens always stays covering and protecting your lens even when the camera is on. It's kind of like a reverse condom. Let me explain. The only time the cover moves out of the way is when you shoot. And with a condom, that's the only time you want it to work. So, lens cover equals reverse condom. Moving on. I want to know what you guys thought Firstly, of the Yashica T2, secondly, of Lomo 800, and thirdly, how trashy my shots are. So let me know in the comments, and let me know what you want me to review next. For you guys who watched my film camera collection video, I am working on reviews of some cameras that you guys asked me. I know Lance and a couple other people asked to do me, well, they didn't ask to do me. That would be problematic. They asked me to do some reviews on the Olympus Pen EE2 and some other cameras, and those are in the lineup. So if you enjoyed the video, like the video. And until the next time I see you guys, peace.